starts with hardcore, ugly punk rock synthesizer Moog music, like, and it's just hardcore close-ups, a montage of elderly women's open corpse dead mouths. And I was like, I can't do this. I'm not doing this at all. No way.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
All right, everybody. It's one fucking hour time. I am Evan Husney. Welcome to the show where we talk about one fucking movie and we just have one goddamn hour to do it. So here we are. We're part of the One Fucking Tober series, everybody, our month-long horror movie marathon. But we're going to get to that in a second here. Let's introduce everybody. To my left, we got Big T, Tom Fitzgerald. What's going on, T?
Hey, welcome back to One Fucking Tober, everybody. All right.
Yeah. Exactly. Beautiful. Nice cup. And to to my right, we also got coming back to the show as always, Mr. Marcus Herring. What's going on, Marcus?
What's up, everybody? Good to be back. I'm really glad to get this one out of the way. I'm done feeling squeamish, feeling queasy,
Yeah.
and I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's get this Faces of Death in the rearview mirror.
That's right. Bearing the lead here. What are we talking about? It's the second episode of our One Fucking Tober series here, the month-long October horror film series. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We are talking about 1978 Faces of Death, man. That's what we're getting into tonight.
Boy.
Yeah, man. So we're all going to have a sleepover here. And we're going to watch this thing and see if we can get through it. Hopefully our parents won't walk downstairs and catch us watching this thing, right? Yeah. So, and, look, a lot of people who are following this channel, you guys sort of, I love the fact that you like to kind of follow along, like this is a book club and you watch the film ahead of time and get ready for the episode. This might be the one where you don't need to watch it because it's not like we're going to be analyzing like what's the best deaths in this man.
It's a cultural curiosity,
right?
And as much as anything, tonight is the subject is the phenomenon of the film, and not even so much like the the last act and
the
like
kills. Yeah. So we're getting into the cultural phenomenon, cultural landscape of the Mondo film, of Faces of Death, the series, and of course starting with the infamous first entry. So don't worry if you're watching this episode and thinking it's going to be a fucking snuff film. It's not. We're going to do this tastefully. We're not going to flash animal cruelty scenes on the screen.
And we'll explain that it's a hype job. And it's a lot less real than it pretends to be,
Exactly. So, all right, that's what we're talking about tonight. But before we get into that, just a quick shout out to the One Fucking Hour Patreon. Patreon.com/onefuckinghour is where you can sign up to become a special Momen of ours for just $5 a month. You get instant access to all of our bonus EPs, audio commentary tracks, and 24-hour early access to every single episode of the show. If you like what we're doing here, it's the best way to support the show, to keep the lights on. And it's just $5 a month, man. You can sub for a month, 2 months, whatever you want. We appreciate it nonetheless. If you're watching us on YouTube and you want to keep all your content there, you can actually just click on our YouTube homepage, find the join button, click that, and become a Moment of the YouTube channel. Same price, same perks. We will be having a bonus episode for this month. So patreon.com/onefuckinghour. We appreciate you guys. All right, should we just get right into this? Are you guys ready to dive head first into fucking Faces of Death?
Dig in.
I actually remember, this was a title we talked about early on as something that we were like, what could this show be? What could the films that we cover, is it going to be, and it was just
was this one of the, what we don't do? What we're not going to do?
Well, it was more like, this is just about as wild a title as we could pick.
Sure.
And it is.
It is.
For a few reasons. It's oddly shaped and it's kind of a bullshit, not real documentary. It's like,
right.
You know what I mean? It's like
It's weird.
It's an object of
It is.
and not really a film. When we mostly cover film,
It's a cultural artifact, is what
Real
it
film.
is. And so, so here we are, guys. I can't believe I'm saying this. 1 fucking hour on Faces of Death. Okay, I'm gonna get the clock
boy
going here. Here we go. Clock this shit up. All right. Quick little synopsis action here. All right, so Faces of Death is the infamous 1978 American mondo horror film and cultural phenomenon that took the 80s VHS world by storm, earning over $60 million in profits.
Jeez.
That's what we're talking about here. Okay, so this film centers on a pathologist named, not subtly named, Francis B. Gross. Okay.
like Francis, he'd be gross. Yeah, come on. This is the mentality of this film.
Totally.
There's a bunch of dumb names, right? Like in the credits. If you piece them out, one is called Johnny Get Your Cock Off.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
And then another one is Conan Le, but it's like, if you sound it out, it's like Conan Le Killer.
Yeah.
It's like Conan Le Killer.
So dumb.
cool,
So
very
adolescent. All right. So Francis B. Gross, we're going to be getting into him a lot more later in the show. But he's played by a guy named Michael Carr. But in the confines of this film, he is purported to be an authentic pathologist who is plagued by nightmares of death. And he narrates and takes, brave viewers on a morbidly curious journey through his collection of rare and, air quotes, real death footage. Okay? That's kind of the framework of this film. Viewers are then exposed to grainy clips of corpses, animal cruelty, gruesome accidents, the eating of monkey brains, and execution. All is promised by the VHS packaging. At the time of its release, though, it was shamelessly purported to be completely authentic. But, in the decades since, it's come to light, just how much of this movie is actually faked. And it lies, I don't know, Tom, what, between 40 and 50% fake, fabricated?
Oh, it's more than that. It's
60?
Really, the way I've seen it, it shakes out to be like 75% fake, 25% real. Yeah,
there you go.
Very
So,
small amount is real.
There
And
you
you
go.
can tell, kind of, when you watch
Yeah,
it.
for sure, which we'll get into. And thankfully, some of the film's, I guess, most objectively distressing sequences wind up being fabricated set pieces. So thank God for that. But there is some gnarly shit still in this film, though, which we're going to get into. So anyway, that's the movie. But I thought kind of a fun way to kick this whole thing off is, obviously I grew up knowing that this was sort of an infamous title, like a sort of dare film that you'd watch to see if you could, handle it, and if you would get some sort of cred in school if you watched this film. And that's 20 years after this movie came out, and it still had that somewhat of that reputation in the 90s. And of course that would evolve later into with my generation more so into like rotten.com was sort of the equivalent of what Faces of Death would be. But where I wanted to start with this is because I remember back in the days where you guys were at Cinefamily, the movie theater in Los Angeles, you guys fucking programmed this movie. And this movie didn't have much of a theatrical life, just to be straight up. And you guys are like, nah, man, we're gonna do a sold out screening of this movie. So what the fuck happened with that
Let's
shit?
find a 35 millimeter reel and show Faces of Death. This was 2012. We had a great series of, it was the Video Nasties, the British band, videotape phenomenon. And we did 31 Midnights in October of 2012.
Which this was one of them.
So much fun.
This was one of the big band films.
And it was it was cumulatively like unbearable, I could watch this, on the 22nd, and then this was like top 10, top 5 even. Okay, so the screening, it was great. So it was midnight, and me and Marcus were there, and unbelievable. I don't even remember how this happened, but the real director of the film, who's otherwise a non de plume in the credits, John Allen Schwartz, the real guy. He showed up, and I did a Q&A with him before the midnight screening, and it was wild.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was so cool. And he was kind of like a low-key, quiet, kind of nebbishy, like a mellow guy who looks like maybe he had kind of a little bit of a wicked sense of humor. And he just explained to me, and this will help, the understanding of how this film came about. He was saying that he was an editor on the show In Search Of, the old TV show hosted by Leonard Nimoy, where they would, look into the phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle and Bigfoot. It was this killer half-hour show. He was an editor on the show, so it made sense that he would dovetail into this because he was dealing with packages of, footage.
Right.
And he got commissioned somehow, him and a team, by the Japanese market.
Yeah.
Theatrical release Japanese market, because they love hard mondo films like Mondo Magic and like really shocking cannibals, like really gnarly, like Savage Man, Savage Beast. Like the Japanese market really, really loved as true, real heavy stuff. So they said, make us in America like the most wild death footage, mondo film. And they went, okay. And it was originally called Junk.
Junk.
Which is the greatest title of all time. It was called Junk in block letters. Junk in Japan. He passed away about 5 years ago. Nice guy. It was very surreal for me to be like. It was the most surreal moment in film programming for me, because it was like, what is even happening? Like let's usually it's like, let's hear it from Paul Mazursky before Bloom in Love, and I'm like talking to John Allen Schwartz.
John Allen Schwartz. That sounds like a fucking serial killer name. Go ahead.
Yeah, that 3-name type of shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll pick up the pace. So the screening happens. Marcus and I were like, let's fucking go nuts and watch Faces of Death on the big screen. That's a big deal. Like, it doesn't play.
Yeah.
Faces of Death, and so we're in the front row, and it starts, and it's like autopsy footage, and it's.
You're in the
I just
front
remember
row?
this. Yeah, front row. Yeah, definitely. Me and him in the front row. And it was like, and there was no one else in the front row. So anyway, so it's huge looking, and it starts with hardcore, ugly punk rock synthesizer Moog music, like, and it's just hardcore close-ups, a montage of elderly women's open corpse dead mouths, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm not doing this at all. No way. Like, and I couldn't hang. It was funny. It wasn't like upsetting. It was just like, this is so assaultive and out of control, and so like G.G. Allen confrontational. Like, it was like for film, forget about it.
But were you?
It was relentless.
But like, were you like, going into it, we were like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're gonna go watch Faces of fucking Death.
Well, I mean, it was crazy, the novelty of seeing it on the big screen on 35 millimeter, because like you were alluding to, and we'll get into it, it didn't play in America like once on film. It wasn't. That's not how this film lived. It lived on video. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
So it was just the novelty of it was just
but
on
you were
paper,
going
it's like,
you were going in like ready to rock, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And so I was immediately like, this is too much for me. And I would come in, I would walk in and I'd leave. And I would do like doses of it, because it's like loud.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just, it was too big. It was like, the front row was
we
stupid.
recognize the specialness of seeing it that way. And then also kind of like, let's do this extreme thing of sitting in the front row. It's going to be loud and it's going to be great. But in the screening itself, it became kind of infamous in a way, because all of that got kind of sidelined by the fact that there was the audience had some extreme responses to it too. Like, I remember someone snuck in like a beer or something, and during one of the quiet moments was one of those things where the bottle like goes like clink, 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 and like rolls like. Takes like a minute to roll all the way to the front. I remember that specifically, but I also will never forget that this is one of the only screenings I've been to where somebody actually threw up.
Whoa.
Yeah, this like death hag chick in leather with her boyfriend. She was drunk and like she just fucking threw up in the 5 rows in, and so she split, and the staff, God bless them, tried to clean it up, and they did an okay job, but it still smelled like vomit for the rest of the film. It was the first time of the movie. So for Faces of Death, it just reeked of vomit for like the 85
kind of amazing
minutes. Yeah, it was wild. It was
Schwartz
kind of
must have
amazing.
loved that, though. He must have just absolutely loved that someone threw up, like when
Maybe, I don't know what he loved, but he was kind of a freak. I always thought like he would like be like Kramer's roommate, like Kramer from Seinfeld. He was like kind of an oddball,
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
He's like,
could you imagine
I brought
if
my own hot dogs to the Mets game.
Yeah.
Like that he's that kind of guy. God bless him. I thought he was great. I enjoyed his company a lot.
Can you imagine
cool. So right on.
if Kramer's roommate on the show was the guy that made Faces
of Death? Can you see that being written in?
I know. It's amazing.
Like him saying it as an aside, like,
yeah.
When I was living with that guy, the guy who made Faces of Death.
Yeah, right.
And when you see this guy, it's so him, John Allen Schwartz. Anyway,
it's so good.
So it was a wild screening. It was wild.
Fucking special. Yeah. I mean, just rewatching it for this, like I was like, all right, I'm gonna fucking do it. Like, you know, I'm not gonna fast forward. There's no pausing. Like I'm gonna faces of death this shit. And it's like, even the stuff that you know is not real, like the sum of its parts, if you will, sort of has this queasy feeling. You know, you feel icky watching it, even though you may be watching something that's fabricated. It still has this effect of like, this is just a bad feeling. You know, the mood of this.
Well, the
whole
music and like
The music.
Dr. Gross is narrating the whole time.
Yeah,
and he's,
I know.
He's actually kind of cool and affecting. He's like really tall and has a weird fake beard, and he's
Yeah.
like very grim. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the way he talks.
There were only two faces that I could recognize, a young woman and a priest. Everything was quiet, and the funeral seemed endless.
Yeah,
That was
totally.
good casting, actually.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, I think the best way to sort of start unpacking this movie is to talk about the sort of phenomenon of mondo films. You know, what if you may be stumbling onto this and you're like, what the fuck is that? Okay.
Yeah.
We may be taking that for granted here, that people might not know what that is. And it's a subgenre. I mean, Tom, I'll let you take it away, but it's basically this sort of genre that started. Did it start with Mondo Cane? Is that the first one? That it was sort of
That's
this,
why
like,
they're called Mondo movies.
right. So it's a kind of hybrid of like journalistic reportage, you know, with like an air of the sensational that kind of looks at these exotic, you know, folkloristic worlds, and it's kind of a travelogue film in a weird way.
Yeah,
Sort of
absolutely.
yeah,
it's
like,
very Italian. I mean, this is
ahead.
the Mondo films. The first one, 1962, is Mondo Cane. It's these two Italian knuckleheads, and it's just an Italian attitude towards things, like, you know, like
Right.
La Dolce Vita, and it's like it's about. And it means like a dog's life, you know, Mondo Cane. And the idea, there's some dumb kind of faux philosophical preface where it's like all throughout this world, the weirdest animal on the planet is the human animal, you know. And like here, they do weird things this way, they're weird this way, and they do things where they juxtapose quote unquote weirdness of like a New Guinea tribe, and then there's like quote unquote the civilized world's bizarre, you know, traits too. And the thing that was really surprising, so it kind of happened, and I don't think anybody thought too much of it. There was precedent. There would be these sort of striptease travelogue films in the 50s where it would be, that's the same format, but then these guys decided to take it into another direction of it being like more about like shock stuff. And the thing that the big thing here is this movie could have came and went, but it was actually a huge hit. And like the soundtrack, the lead song is called "More," and it like won an Oscar.
Oh yeah, that's
Mondo Cane won an Oscar.
Yeah, that's Ennio Morricone, right? It was
no, Ritz
Oh.
Ortolani. Yeah.
Oh, Ritz Ortolani.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yes.
No, but so what I'm saying is like it was a huge phenomenon. 1962, the 60s had just started. It was still pre-Beatles, and it was one of those things along with James Bond that was like. It was a signature of like, this is a new time. This is the 60s now. Yeah. You know, and it was very European, and like, you know, people would like Mondo Cane, I think, too, because like you're in Wichita in like February, and like Mondo Cane's like, it feels cool and European. So anyway.
It's almost like a magazine too, you know, in a way, like they're traveling around.
Like a National Geo.
World. Yeah.
Absolutely. All narrated. So what I'm saying is it was a huge phenomenon. It was like wild. I think it was much more popular than even the guys who made it expected, you know?
Right.
So there's Mondo Cane 2, there was Echo, there was, you know, the slave trade in the world today. There was, you know, there was really a million, and they all did really well. Sadismo. And it was big. So I'm walking through this to get us to Face of Death.
The faux, just correct me if I'm wrong, but the faux part was always a big part of it too, right? That
you're right.
It was like fake film, faking things and presenting it as real events.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. There was some. You're so right. There was some doc stuff in Mondo Cane, but then they would. It was choreographed. It was organized. You know, like so to make it like, and that's again very Italian. Like they're like, you know, like no, you go this way when you're being yourself, and go that, you know, and like everything's blocked and framed,
like reality TV in a way almost.
Yeah, no, it's the beginning of reality. Great point. And so it's really popular. Yeah. Through the 60s, there's a lot of knockoffs that goes on for a while. It starts getting a little. Oh, no, go ahead.
I just want to say also we should clarify that these films. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of them, but most of them are kind of plotless, right? Like they're kind of just artfully constructed set pieces, vignettes.
Like you said, they're travelogue. So it's
travelogue
like
set
now
to
in
like
Singapore.
Yeah, very like seductive, romantic music, and it's kind of just
Right.
this very like it's like a trip, you know. I mean, it's really they're
It's
kind
like,
of
if you think about it, it's like, in a weird way, I think the original market was for like old Italian men to like look at the Fiji Islands, you know, but then also snicker at their European continent counterpoints and their weird Catholic
Right.
rituals. You know, it's like
Right.
Totally.
and it's very cynical. It's like kind of old man, but like old man, like with visions of like Tahiti, you know.
right.
So anyway,
It might be
so,
like a
so
philosophical thread or something that connected all the set pieces too.
Right.
That was a common thing.
it was a little
Sure.
bullshit philosophical narration, yeah. So it's big, and it kind of goes bust by like 1970. And what the continuation of Mondo films were these harsher ones that were emphasizing more, you know, like people getting attacked by a bull, you know, or like
Yeah.
an execution by a death squad of the rebel forces in Congo, that kind of thing. And it was just sort of
Hunting,
narrowing into this darker, harsher thing.
Yeah, like-
till you got to movies like Shocking Cannibals,
Yeah.
and the World of the Last Man, you know, like by 75, 77. And it was still it was Italian production still. And it was just, the emphasis was like less on Tahiti girls in grass skirts and like, you know, crazy cocktails with bugs on them, you know, like, you know,
Yeah.
people eating bugs in Manhattan. And it just became more just like grim and harsher by the mid 70s. And it became, you know, like brutal and it reduced to that point. And like I was saying before, the Japanese were some of the biggest consumers of this stuff. They really loved it. And they had commissioned, very weirdly, if you think about it, a couple weirdos in Los Angeles and like make like the ultimate, you know, crazy, you know, one of these like Italian movies. And they were like, you got it. So that's what gets us here. So it's in context with Mondo film in general and how they got harsher and more condensed into like a brutality in the 70s.
Can I add on to that too? Because it's interesting from what I read is that, you know, when you're talking about the director of the film, again, sorry, his name, Michael Anthony White.
Oh, John Allen Schwartz.
John Allen Schwartz.
Don't get it wrong.
So after he, you know, he graduated from Cal Arts with a bachelor in the fine arts of theater, you know, moved to Hollywood, became an errand boy, started hanging out at these edit bays, you know, like all these guys, they become assistant editors, then they become main editors, and he starts working for these small doc companies making, you know, these In Search Of sort of Nat Geo style pieces and other things like that.
You know who's like that is the guy who did Henry. Made shit like
Exactly.
this.
I was going to bring that up.
Sorry.
I was literally thinking that when I was reading this. It's like John McNaughton, who made Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. You know, he works for this company that they had all this found footage. I think they were like a big found footage licensor, and he came in and, you know, saw, I'm sure, the success of this film.
Oh yeah,
and
he
thought
made
they could-
VHS packages of old mobster
you
newsreel
go.
footage and like shot like you know, gangsters getting shot in
Yeah.
the street and
Totally.
repackage them
Totally.
for like, you know, like mob hits too,
Yeah.
you know, on VHS.
Yeah, and I'm sure he saw the success of Faces of Death and was like, we should get into this horror movie market, and then
Absolutely.
they do Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. But one thing I was just going to quickly say about the Japanese executives, they came to him and they asked specifically about making a documentary about death. Like they wanted to capture the horror of extinction, and the more macabre, the better. You know, and that was like that was what they wanted. Which, can you just imagine that, like today, like being approached, you know, to do something?
Well, it's very
that.
Videodrome.
It's very
Videodrome
Videodrome.
Sideways references to that with like Japanese businessman executives, right?
That's true. That's very true. It is very Videodrome. Shout out, we did the Videodrome episode in our archives as well too. Sorry, Marcus, were you going to say something?
No, I was just thinking about In Search Of and wondering if that was, you know, influenced by Mondo Kane too. You know, just like that. Whoever produced In Search Of, you know, those type of shows, you know, and Connections and things. I wondered if that was influenced by that movie. And someone was like, "Well, we'll do a TV show in that vein."
I think it was. There's another huge, like, bullshit documentary, Chariots of the Gods? Question mark. From 1971 or something, and that's definitely In Search Of, and that's kind of, and actually there is some dovetailing. There's some tonal style alliances with the phenomenon phony baloney documentaries that were very big in the 70s. See, that's the thing. 70s, the phenomenon documentaries were big, and then it led even to a television show, In Search of. So okay, so I just want to show you. So this is for the second film, but here's some marketing.
Nice.
The Japanese marketing of Faces of Death 2.
That's awesome.
So
that's great.
The marketing is part of the legend too. I mean, like I remember vividly seeing these, 3, 4, 5 movies in the video store, like all lined up, and they scared the shit out of me because I knew what they were. Every kid did, and it sounded like so scary. Like, why would they even make a film like that? And the box art was really scary, especially the second one with that doctor kind of beckoning you with the scalpel. It's fucking terrifying. Yeah. And I remember my dad kind of like describing some of the scenes to me, about like what happened, like the alligator, describing the monkey.
Oh yeah. Well, listen,
it sounded so scary, but it's so funny now to look back and think like, how did anyone ever believe that these were real? We have a much more sophisticated eye now. But like, they seem a lot more fake.
Well, it is intermingled with real stuff. I won't get into that, but I decided not to wear this. This is what he's talking about.
Oh God, put that away.
My Faces of Death 2 T-shirt.
Oh, that's so cool.
I need to own a Faces of Death 2 T-shirt. So because it's like that. So okay, no, but what you're getting at, Marcus, is like, so this is, people I don't think understand this, maybe I said it before on the show, is that it didn't come out anywhere except Japan. It played in theaters in Japan. It was mostly called Junk. And then I think later Faces of Death. But it never played America. You could search for a newspaper.com for screenings of Face of Death. Nothing. It did not play America. No one in America knew this film in 1979, 80, 81, 82, 82. But 85, it blew up. And when I was a kid, that's when I had my rite of passage. And then it became huge. It became a lot of hand-wringing, worrisome, moralizing arguments like, do you know that your kids are watching this? And it was part of sort of America's subversion of video nasties. There was no legislation, but there was brief moral outrage. Yeah. That like, are you seeing what your kids are? Because the thing is, it was in tandem. It was the big taboo, infamous title of the video rental store phenomenon. Mm-hmm. It was there was nothing even close to it, and it was wildly popular, and that's where they made like $30 million from the rentals. And I did it. We watched it, and we're just dumb. And, there's something I think maybe, at least maybe for boys, but I think boys and girls, where you have to kind of like face death, and face like the gnarly, because it's part of the rite of passage of like maturation from like candy cane Disneyland world, and like kind of start dipping your toe into like the harsher realities of life. And I think something like this is a cheap way to like get hit in the head by that. And I think that it's like, in a way, I think it'd be weird to not watch Faces of Death if you're like a 13-year-old.
Right. It made me not want to grow up, because it's like, if growing up is like seeing people have an orgy inside of guts, I don't think I want to grow up. And I remember catching a glimpse of that in a trailer, or maybe there was an excerpt on something, a scene. I remember, and I thought that was the whole movie, and I was like, of course you don't know it's fake back then, and you're just like, that was the first thing from Faces of Death I saw as a kid, and I was like, that looks just terrifying. That's almost like, it's almost like worse than stuff you see on Rotten.com in a way. An orgy and a bunch of guts, it's like you can't even like really explain it.
Oh, can we talk about that for a second? So here's the thing. Maybe we can get into this topic. That's one of the fake scenes. What you're referencing, Marcus, is there's this cult, and it's led by this Manson-y guy, and like they're like, let's sacrifice this virgin and start eating her liver and stuff like that. By the way, if you watch the film, the head of that cult is John Allen Schwartz.
Hell yeah, it is.
That's Kramer's roommate right there. With the beard.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just really quick, just to put a bow on something you said earlier about we were talking about, how much of a success this film was in Japan. I've seen people say that it allegedly outgrossed Star Wars over there. I don't know if that's true, but I heard that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And
there's a lot of claims made about this movie too, like they
that's
say
true.
It's banned in 46 countries, and I guess that wasn't true.
It was banned in like 20 though. It was that's I always forget that it was banned all over the place. Germany, New Zealand. Up until like the 2000s, even some places,
And then I also read that it's considered to be also the third highest grossing film in the Hong Kong box office prior to 1980. So right behind The Fog, which was considered to be the highest grossing film. How cool is that? The Fog. And then The Fog, Empire Strikes Back in number 2, and then number 3, Faces of Death, y'all. So that's just amazing.
You know what this reminds me of is Terrifier 3 beating the new Joker movie. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. God. You know, like, and by the way, I watched every Terrifier movie this weekend.
What did you do this weekend? What did you do this weekend?
I watched every Terrifier movie, including this terrible early one that's like
I just want to make sure everybody
the anthology film.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is it's like
bonus episode.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is like and the thing is the Terrifier production company, like they're hyping, like people are passing out and vomiting and there's paramedics. So they're doing that, and it's part of the the jazzing up of it all. But what I'm saying is like actually, can I get into this? This is what's happening. So Terrifier 3 comes out, and there was a weird, suspicious. Listen. So Terrifier 3 comes out, but there was right with it a suspicious bump in Wild Robot, the kid animated film.
Okay,
and everyone in the industry is like, "Oh, brother," because Terrifier 3 is unrated. And the theaters are like, no, kids, all like 12, 13-year-old kids, you can't go walk into Terrifier 3. Come on. And but they go, okay, well, then we'll get Wild Robot. So there was literally a bump in box office for Wild Robot when the weekend that Terrifier 3 came out. So here's what I'm saying. This is a modern version. I mean, of course, Terrifier 3 is not real at all, but it's very gory. It's like unbelievable state-of-the-art, horrifying gore. But it's like that ritual that I was talking about before. I don't know if it's good or bad, but there's something, I think in boys and girls, where it's like that scratching that itch of like, because like we're in bodies, and like to see like that we are limited by our body. We're not like spiritual angels and Tinkerbell people. Like we're just like at these dumb meat things, and like we're like like very susceptible to like trauma, and like there's some thrill to like exercise. Letting yourself feel that. Does anybody know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Yes. No, for sure. And people were passing out at Joker too, but they were falling asleep, I think, right?
Hey-o!
Okay. So anyway, all right. So what did I want to say? Where was I? Oh, I think there's just one little piece of the lead up to Faces of Death that we left out too, which is just the cultural sort of piece that, films were getting more hardcore, going into the late 70s. Pornography was getting more hardcore especially in the cinemas. And I think, and we've talked about this before when we talked about the Salo episode, shout out in the archives when we did that. Sure. We talked about just like people in the zeitgeist were sort of like, where is this all heading? Is it all going to lead to a snuff film? Right. And so like the world culturally was sort of setting the stage for a film like Faces of Death in many ways to come out. Like, would you agree? I mean, I think. Yeah,
like just like you're saying, I think even more than like there will be a snuff movie that comes out, it's more like, and it'll be at the multiplex at the mall.
Oh, right.
Because of the mainstream people, again, adults. I don't know what they, but something must have been happening in the 70s where they extrapolated like, well, if we're having hardcore penetration scene, like down the street. And you go buy popcorn and watch like something that was unimaginable 5 years before. They go, well, I guess, is this the inevitable conclusion? We talked about that, and how the stupid film Snuff in 1976 marketed on that sort of fear and curiosity and fascination with like, is this the next step in pornographic violence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're right. In a way, Faces of Death does cash that check. Although it's mostly 75% fake, it is marketed that way.
It's marketed that way.
It's like the ad. Well, here's the thing on my T-shirt, which is the tagline for Face of Death 2: "When make believe is just not enough."
Yeah, that's great.
Wow. So anyway, so it was an attitude, and it didn't really. It wasn't borne out.
And then, and then
people did think like almost with again curiosity and fascination and fear.
Yeah.
That our civilization's going in this direction.
Yeah.
I do think it's kind of interesting that there are other films that were doing this kind of snuffy type stuff that had a bunch of snuff film, like, set pieces throughout, like Emmanuel in America or Snuff or
Hardcore.
Cannibal Holocaust or something. But
hardcore.
Right. Well, it had like a plot that's going through the entire movie, you know, but Faces of Death is like, let's get rid of the story and just show the kill
Right.
It's a
scenes,
Mondo
basically,
film.
you know.
Right.
Right. No, I know, but that's the one that becomes more infamous than these other
totally.
ones that you have to
And
kind of like dig for.
No, 100%. And it creates this mystique about it into the 80s where it's like, okay, this, for people who don't know the context of a Mondo film, okay, this is now just a formless perversion, you know, of just nonstop, you know, no format, no nothing. It's just death, death, death. And or it's like, you know, and I'm sure it's also playing off of all the horror movie, the slasher freaks, who now it's like, okay, all that stuff in that movie is fake, but now here's the
like
real
Maniac,
thing.
like Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're right, the graphic gore of the regular films, the non quote unquote documentaries like that. Here, can I add a little bit of a curveball though? And this is personally what fascinates me about this film. The end of the film, the note the film ends on, is the birth of a baby. A woman's giving birth.
Crazy.
And all this sappy kind of country western pop Olivia Newton-John song plays to a montage of sunsets,
flowers,
and wheat fields and flowers growing.
Yeah.
And this personally is what I love about this film. And we talked about this before we did the show. But what I love is that this film is at this midpoint, if you want to look at it that way, between that film Mondo Cane from 1962 that gets a little rough between there and more or less modern times, the last 20 years with Rotten.com and just, you know, awful beheading videos and stuff from the Middle East. And it's just like 13-year-olds watch that now. But there's this weird sweet spot because Faces of Death, it is a film. It's edited. There's music cues. There's narration. There's dissolves.
There's some artistry to it.
Yeah, there's lighting choices. You know, and that's what's so weird about it to me that makes it fast. And it ends on that note that's kind of campy because there is kind of a tongue-in-cheek quality to the film because, again, the director is part of the zeitgeist and that kind of Mr. Mike's Mondo video from you know, Saturday Night Live, like it's like hardcore kind of dark punk rockish humor, and so it's ironic what I'm saying, the happy ending with the baby and the sunset and all that stuff. But it's still it's a choice that you wouldn't see now anymore.
No,
like and people who make maybe like you know, those disturbing videos like Obey the Walrus and all that stuff. It's not going to have like an interlude where it's like sunsets and like Olivia Newton-John music. That is
pretty sick.
Is the weird sweet spot.
It's pretty sick.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do love that in the 70s too, like just that these horrible, you know, violent, you know, gory movies would often have like a sweet song, like, you know, like Cannibal Holocaust or House on the Edge of the Park, or, you know, all these violent scenes, but then the soundtrack can be like really sweet and soft.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it does relate to More, the song that was an Academy Award-winning song from the first film, Mondo Cane, the song called More. Yeah. So it is sort of like baked in, like, well, what are we gonna like? What's our pretty closing song? It's just a weird style, and and that's all been and I'll just make this last thing, and I'll stop rambling. I'm sorry, but like, it's analogous to pornography because pornography now is just grab a camera and Van Nuys and just, you know, a bunch of people fucking and stuff like that, whatever. But in the 70s, as we all know, there was like, you know, like opening credit sequences and like performances and all that stuff. The subject of like, you know, the towards the end of Boogie Nights, where it's like, it doesn't have to look good. We just got to like get it on footage, get the footage on camera. And so it's really the same thing. And all I'm saying is Faces of Death is kind of like the old school like pornography that had sort of this more grander idea of actual filmmaking when it really is just sort of this base, you know, need being fed for like like sensationalism. And now that's all completely gone, and it's just a camera.
There's no craft.
People fucking in a patio.
No. So there is craft to this movie to some extent, right? So So you know, our director in this film, he's like, okay, we didn't know what we were going to do, how we were going to produce this. But they agreed at the front it had to be, you know, the more shocking and bloody and crazy it was, the better, right? And they came up with this idea of having Dr. Gross, the pathologist in this film, which is kind of amazing because they discovered this kind of perfect looking guy for this role. I guess just like he was walking in the hallway of his office or a office and spotted this guy and was just like, "You'd be perfect for this."
Wow.
And had him
and
started.
this guy,
yeah,
whatever his real name is, he did B-movie westerns in like the 50s, you know.
Wow.
Crazy.
Totally like at the bottom of the barrel of like the Hollywood machine, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But he's affecting. He's got a real screen presence.
He does. And what was interesting is they had to come up with a reason of why he would be fascinated by death, you know, and what would provoke him to want to basically share these clips with an audience. And it's interesting. You have a pathologist who, you know, has this library of death footage, but he's kind of this guy that's being plagued by these nightmarish visions of death and funerals and everything, and had these recurring nightmares about all this stuff. And he sort of needs to see all this through and share it to sort of get over that. Pretty interesting choice, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like there's a character study, you know, like, and it had to be written. His like inner monologue had to be written, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. And so then this is interesting to me. As I'm reading just a couple BTS stories on this movie, I'm thinking like, maybe I shouldn't be broadcasting this out to everybody and be more protective over it. It's like, screw the making of like The Godfather as a dramatic TV series. How about the making of Faces of Death as a dramatic TV series?
It was one ticket sold right here. Yeah. No. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Like just like a crisp 90-minute like Netflix movie or something.
Oh, it'd be great. It'd be great.
Yeah, I can totally see it.
Yeah, totally. And so, for example, one of the dream sequences early on in this film is, you know, a bunch of the director and his friends dressed in suits carrying an open coffin, and you see it, right? And there's a girl in the coffin. Apparently, that was the office secretary, okay? Gotta love it, who they had play the woman in the coffin.
Classic.
And this is a fabricated scene, of course. She's dressed in white. And when they filmed the closing of the coffin, when they had filmed that, they kept her inside too long in the coffin. and then when they began to lift her out of the coffin, when the shot was over, she was already like unconscious. And they tried to like revive her, and like they had a difficult time like reviving her.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And so it's like, and that was one of the early things that they shot for this film, and that was kind of this weird omen that sort of, you know,
well,
happened to them.
it sounds like a pretty inept group of people because, again,
for sure,
John Allen Schwartz, he just did editing work. His resume was really just editing work on In Search of, and probably like maybe like an educational film here and there, you know, just like, so he had never helmed like a feature, you know, production, you know.
No. So it's
probably
again
didn't know what they were doing.
He had probably no idea what they were doing. And then again, like just another little tidbit of making this film, just, you know, and this is kind of like a doc aspect to it, you know, because you are, you know, because they did film kind of doc footage for this. You know, they went to the slaughterhouses, which is some of the most upsetting sequences in the movie.
But, you know, keep in mind, it was simply a documentation of, you know,
of course,
animal factory food production.
No,
you know.
of course, it's just
obviously it
up.
wasn't staged; it was commonplace. Although I've heard that almost all the practices represented are no longer happening. For what it's
right.
worth.
I think that's true. Yeah,
it is really, that is one of the most squeamish sections, and it is weird because it is just like a big, you know, mirror to how disconnected we in America are from like where the food comes from,
where your hamburger comes from.
Right. I remember even in France when they would have like the chickens at the grocery store still have their heads, they still have their legs. You know, there's pig heads like in the grocery store. You know, so
yeah, it's crazy. And I guess when he went to the slaughterhouse, you know, like he asked one of them, like what was it like doing this day after day? And one of the guys was like, someone's, you know, got to do it, so it might as well be me, you know. And this was crazy. Like, I guess there was one experience that he would never forget filming at like one of the slaughterhouses that, like, I guess, you know, kills the lambs or whatever. One of the guys came up to him and said, "Put me in your movie. Put me in your movie." And he's like, "Why should I?" And then without answering the question, he just bit the ear off of a living lamb and spat it out.
Shit.
Yeah.
So he's like a real freak geek, like farmhand guy.
Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's scary. That's totally scary.
And then the director said that the lamb screams like reverberate in his head to this day when he did this interview. And that was a scene that he had filmed but did not put it in the film. So that footage exists of the ear being bitten off.
Thank you, John Allen Schwartz.
Yeah, right.
Sparing us.
So the movie, just to talk about some of the set pieces in the movie real quick. I mean, right away, the movie opens with like fucking open heart surgery. Now, is that real? What's going on there? Do you know?
That is. Yeah.
All
That
that
is real.
stuff, all that medical stuff, the autopsies and the operations, that's just B-roll footage of like film crews. Yeah, it's just
Fucking nuts.
not fun.
Not fun at all. Medical
And the
shit.
synth there.
And there you go. There's the artistic choice. Like really heavy, severe killer synth soundtrack.
Yeah. Jesus.
and it adds to the unnerving quality, and that's what was repelling us when we were in the front row.
Yeah, I know.
for it.
Shit. What were you thinking? What were you thinking?
Too much.
Yeah. So it opens with that. You meet the pathologist. He takes you again. Oh yeah, and you have this like this montage of mummies and like you were saying, like the old women's gaping mouths. And it's
I
just
couldn't
like
deal with that.
It's really heavy. Don't watch that shit.
Corpses on the slab and
Yeah.
morgue.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Morgue is
Jesus.
a bad place. Yeah.
Yeah.
God,
Morgue is a bad
damn,
place.
man. But again,
Like
it's like this is part of life. Like
It is.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think about it like if I was a doctor, a nurse, or a mortician or whatever, like I wouldn't be the way I am, and most of us are, which is like yikes. Like I
Yeah.
can't do, they'd just be like, okay, blood, and like, oh, there's the guy's brain. And it's like not that they're bored by it, but it's just it's a thing of life inside of all of us, or all these gross things that could
It's
get,
insane.
If they get turned inside out, it's like
Yeah.
and it should
It's the
be
same with
unnerving.
the African tribe shooting the cow with the arrow and like collecting his blood or whatever, if that's real. Which I think it is. They're connected. They're killing animals all the time. And
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of this is probably what someone like Godard would say. Like, we're all responding as candy ass Disneyland Americans. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Right. Right. Knowing that we are closer to this stuff than we'd really like to think, and, death is a big form of taboo, in our society. And
The biggest.
yeah, the biggest. And so here it is right in front of your fucking face. One of the other kind of crazy set pieces in this too is one of the early sequences is like, we're also like showing, dog fights in Compton, which is like also crazy.
I heard that was faked.
It was. I mean, but you're like I think it was staged, but I think they did meet up with people who do this.
Right,
Like
staged.
they like met
Like
with
Mondo
people.
County.
Yeah, these are people who do this. They knew a guy who knew a guy, and they did it. But the dog that's actually like dead in that scene that was faked by a freeze frame because I guess when after these, I guess bouts where the dogs fight each other, they get really exhausted and just kind of like are laying down or whatever, and so they just took that. But
And
the
so they
blood's
frame-
real.
It's how you frame it, which is in the classic Mondo movie style. The framing of it all,
Totally.
Part of the joy, one of the only joys I can find watching this movie is kind of doing that riff where you go through a movie and just point out all the things, all the revealing things that show how fake it is. That's one of the fun parts for me. I remember in the Amazon like sort of headhunter tribe. There's like this like kind of like tribal drum track like dun, 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 in the background. And then it cuts to like another scene that goes to an African tribe, and it's the same track. It's the exact same kind of like drum track playing. I love stuff like that.
Exactly. Busted. Well, one thing I noticed, maybe Evan, is right in what we're talking about right now, the fake, the real, the choreographed stuff. Mm-hmm. This was interesting to me. The most interesting thing I read was the production company would watch real newsreel footage.
Yeah.
And take crib notes and go, this is how, like, you'd walk in, and here's how the body would lay on the ground, so they would base their set pieces, these fake, like police, coming into a house after a shooting.
Oh yeah,
On the floor.
That's staged.
And and that's staged, but it's funny because they were trying to get it's a weird thing that maybe doesn't happen much before or after, where you're like tracking closely the minutia of the reality of newsreel footage, and then doing a play version of it. That's very odd, and they do a pretty good job actually. Like at first, I did take a double take, but it does seem a little too staged. But the attention to detail was impressive, I would say.
Yeah, what's that called? We were talking about this like a few months ago, you and I. The idea, I think it's ENG is the word. It's the ENG news camera style, which is the electronic news gathering style of documenting that stuff. And I think that's what they were trying to copy there in that scene, because I think it's bookended by like a real police shootout, right? Like it has a police shootout, and then outside, it goes into the house, and when you follow through into the house, they have a staged setting there of like, how this guy had killed his entire family or whatever. But that's obviously
they tried to match the footage the best they could. It's like it's an odd gig to try to supplement real B-roll newsreel footage with your own like stage stuff with like the production company secretary on the ground with fake blood, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know exactly. So one of the most infamous scenes in the film is I guess the one that has the most rep, we should say, for this movie, is the monkey dinner scene. Which is crazy conceptually.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
If that is a real thing that they're doing a fake riff on, like, and it probably is real somewhere.
I think what I had read is that it was sort of like he had conflated the idea of that people, do eat monkey brains. Like that's a thing people do eat. It's a cuisine thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That people do that. But I think he had sort of come up in his own mind with this idea that we're going to actually kill the monkey at the table. Because what you see, for those who've not seen the film and who probably won't, this is a scene in this movie where it's like these guys all come in, these kind of more, I guess they're sort of like wealthier people. They come into this like Middle Eastern restaurant.
Well, they have expensive tastes.
Taste.
Jet
and
setters.
The waiter, they want to eat monkey brains. So the waiter shows them this monkey, and they strap this monkey into the table so it can't move, and its head is
in the center of the table.
This head is just peeking out, and then they take like mallets and like bash its head in, and then they open its skull and eat the brains of the monkey.
Cracking walnuts.
But through the magic of editing, you don't see it happen, on screen.
Well, it's also, spoiler, totally fake. And
Right.
its brains are cauliflower,
Yeah.
So it's a made up, based on what you're saying, so like made up concept and executed made up. So it's
Still
all
fucking
fake. But I believe it when I was a kid. I thought it was
Oh, you
real.
did? Yeah. My dad described it to me, and I was like, what? That sounds horrible. It scared me. And like when I finally saw it, I was like, I can't believe you believe that. But I guess, we
I
are
think
more
in the
sophisticated
context of
as
the
an
time.
audience. Not
I
just
think
kids,
so.
but didn't like adults believe it back then too, maybe?
I think everybody believed it.
I think everybody
That's
did.
actually one of the most Mondo Kane type sequences in the film, where it's kind of like the fascination of like our fellow human beings do some really weird stuff, and like they eat weird things, and like, I've always heard that like, like some parts of the world might think that eating unfertilized poultry eggs is so revolting it's like unimaginable. Eggs.
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of thing, where it's like but monkey brains maybe in some part of the world, it's like whatever,
Yeah.
But for us it's so people eat dogs, in other parts of the world,
Sure. Yeah, so it's nuts. I mean, they worked with a monkey trainer, they did this whole thing and and like the mallets are foam, and as Tom said, the brains were cauliflower and stuff. But just conceptually, totally deranged scene to put in your movie there. And
it's nuts.
One of the other scenes that would be in my Making of Faces of Death TV series is how they did what happened to them when they did the cockfights scene. So they actually traveled to Leon, Mexico to film cockfights, which is pretty interesting. just imagine these ragtag guys like fucking going on these adventures.
I know.
Putting
Sounds
this
fun.
crazy ass movie together, you know?
Yeah.
But while they're filming the cockfights, unfortunately, our director here came down with what's called turista. Okay. So while they're filming the cockfights, he's wandering around the parking lot, shitting and puking his brains out.
He drank the water, I guess.
And he thought
That's
he
so
was going
John
to die.
Allen Schwartz.
He thought, yeah, he thought he was going to die. And, but yeah, I guess the night before they had stayed up playing poker with the locals, drank too many shots of tequila and ate pork burritos. So was paying for it there. But just imagine that circumstance, you know, making this fucking movie.
Well, like I said, that's another chapter in your
It is.
docudrama.
It is. Ryan Murphy, are you listening?
Exactly.
And just quick shout out to the assassin in the film. Always loved the assassin. That little
Yes.
where it's like that amazing voice augmentation that he has.
with his weapons and stuff.
His
that's
weapons.
that's pretty ice cold badass, like 1979 kind of shit. I agree with you. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, and preceding that is a absurdly fake like documentation of an assassination. You know,
Yeah, it is very
and like
bad.
that political leader comes up
Yeah.
and it's just so like the
A French-
director's. That's
yeah.
the director's roommate. This fat guy with a big beard. He's like, I was promised to you that it's like that is so cheap jack thrown together, and that's such an obvious phony guy in a cheap, ill-fitting suit. It's like so bad. I love that. That's camp. It's camp.
It is.
You know?
Yeah, it's bad for sure. Any other little set pieces you want to shout out in this movie?
I will say in the alligator scene, which
Okay.
I love, you can hear they're saying, "Keep the camera rolling, keep the camera rolling," when the alligator's eating the guy. But right before that, they're talking about how alligators are bred now or whatever. And I noticed, as an animal person, that it's actually a crocodile pit that they're at.
Oh,
at first.
wow.
So they're calling crocodiles alligators, and that's just
That's not right.
I also like some of the music choices were really killing me too. Like in the electric chair sequence, there's like this like kind of ragtime music playing. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, good call.
Yeah.
Like some of the most insensitive music cues you can imagine. Good. I keep forgetting about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's something set in New Orleans,
Yeah.
like Suicides in New
The
Orleans.
Suicide Jumper, it's literally
That's
it's
real.
jump blues playing in the back. That style of
Yeah.
music where it's like a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Like
It's
yeah. Is that, well, and then there's like
kind of like Benny Hill or something
farm,
too. You know?
kind of, yeah. But the farm animals being killed to like Old MacDonald,
Yeah.
You know what it? Okay. I was saying like Mr. Mike's Mondo video, the guy from Michael O'Donoghue from Saturday Night Live. He probably would have loved Faces of Death if he hadn't seen it. Maybe he did see it. But it's also reminding me of like, we were talking earlier about that team that worked on Hustler.
Yeah.
I'm spacing on his name completely from Permanent Midnight.
Wait.
Jerry Stahl.
Jerry Stahl?
Yeah, Jerry Stahl, and then the other guy, Rinse Dream. I forget.
Oh,
his
yeah.
real
Yeah.
name.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Whatever, who did Cafe Flesh. And like that actually, now that I think about it, Hustler humor is 100% matching
Right.
this humor. Like
Or,
the meat
um,
cartoons.
Grinder. Yeah.
National
Yeah, right.
Lampoons, too, I guess.
And National Lampoon. But now it's like National Lampoon dovetailed or created a more harsh
Hustler.
kind of bass version that
Sure.
is happening as the 90s approached.
Yeah.
As the 80s approached. With literally Hustler, though. It's like they're sort of making up to, like, they're making points, but it's like as much as anything, the existence of it being so confrontational towards like mainstream happy face, mediocrity. Like that's the point of it as much as anything. It's rude, and it has that spirit of punk rock, where it's like it's an assault on good taste, and it actually relates to like John Waters, that was. I'm saying that's like there was a cycle that was happening in the '70s, and I'll just say it's like the assault on good taste, and this is right when people like punk rockers at clubs would start watching 16 millimeter prints of like Blood Feast and the Gore Girls, like so it was like trash camp, and let's think about it, like Pink Flamingos. Like there's parts of the movie people don't talk about that much, but like at the party, the cops come in Pink Flamingos.
Yeah.
And what do? They kill them and they cannibalize them, and they're like eating their fucking bones and stuff. And it's like another relation I'm having with it is like Robert Crumb underground comic books.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
where it's like, and what I'm saying is the whole thing, like what the big engine that's like fueling a lot of this stuff is to be an assault and a confrontation of boring middle class mainstream
subversive,
reality.
subverting.
Yeah,
you know,
but by its very existence.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah. And yeah, so this is kind of the ultimate, subversion of that. And check
But the
this
shock
out.
value is so strong that it overpowers the humor. Like,
Definitely.
especially in this
Here.
movie. Like,
It does,
most people
yeah.
don't think this is funny at all.
No,
No, I know.
No.
Well, Mr. Mike often, did humor that was like, this is too far. And there was a nickname for it. There was like a New Yorker article. It was called like dead baby jokes are in this year. That was a shorthand for this
Right.
style of humor,
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Well, and it's like John Allen Schwartz is probably not the type of guy who I'm glad maybe maybe he was during the Q&A where he came out, was like, this whole movie's a satire, and one of those like kind of revisionist looks, it was supposed to be a Nixon satire. Go ahead.
Right. I'm trying. It's tough. I wish I could remember it better. But I think he was just saying it was all kind of just like a goof. It wasn't a goof.
It's a goof.
Like
All right.
he's not an auteur, and it was partly like it's a gig, so why not make this gig like a goof?
What a gig this is. All right, and well, maybe some of the consequences of this gig. We should mention it because this film also, had spilled out into reality a little bit. In June of '85, believe this would also be in my series. A mathematics teacher named Bart Schwarz, no relation, showed the film to his class. Showed the film to his high school class.
I saw that. Yeah.
Two of his students claimed they were so traumatized by the film they developed an unnatural fear of dying and suffered emotional distress. And then they had to settle, for $100,000 to the families, I guess.
It's funny because
Yeah.
they were showing those like highway films to the class still at that time,
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
drunk
but that
driving
had
films.
not in high school, but to driver's ed.
Driver's
So
ed,
like
yeah.
it was all framed in context. This
Shock.
is rough, and watch the
Yeah.
roads, kids. But it's a very weird story. I read all about that. It's like it was thrown on casually. It was like he had a VHS that had like maybe a nature doc, and then on the
Unreal.
same tape at like LP speed, he had that just rolled on. So he was like, I think it was like a studies class. So he's like sitting there reading a magazine, and he just like leaves the tape on,
Amazing.
So he's not even paying attention or really even understands like what
Amazing.
might be on the second feature on this tape,
Oh, God.
So he didn't quite go like, and now let's watch Faces
of Death, right?
He was
Amazing.
just more like, some stuff's on, who cares? And
All
then
right.
when he realized what it was, he was still. This is when he was maybe should have turned it off. He was like, oh, okay, Face of Death's on, all right, okay.
And then there's also
15-year-olds.
the following year in November, a 14-year-old bludgeoned his classmate to death with a baseball bat and claimed the idea was conceived after viewing Faces of Death as he was curious about what it would be like to kill someone.
The fur seal part, right? That's the only like clubbing that happens.
Which is also even the steel thing is fake, by the way.
That
Yeah.
one blew my mind because I thought for sure that one was
fake.
done pretty well.
Yeah.
Guy is still in
well,
jail for
go ahead.
that, by the way. He's
Well,
still
maybe
in prison.
as we wrap this up, like the post Faces of Death, there was 2 immediately. I saw that back then. I haven't watched it since. There was a 3. Then there was a thing called Traces of Death.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, okay, what does that mean? And there were just like there were a ton of these, and like I'm sure with like what's the term reduced
Yeah.
rewards, like
Exponentially
Diminishing
less good
returns.
each time.
especially lesser interest, and like and it didn't have that sweet spot like I was saying. I'm sure like 5 years into these kinds of shitty movies that gets cranked out to capitalize on the Face of Death popularity, I'm sure less and less they had those montages of waterfalls and sunsets, which is again that sweet spot that I love of this 1978 thing. And they just got I haven't watched them really, but like I think there's one called like The Worst of Faces of Death, whatever that is.
Well, there's
like,
Fact or Fiction is one of them, I think, too, or something like that.
No,
Yeah.
then you know what? Can I just say there's another thing this was a scare for me in my 20s. This was on the TV commercial. You guys remember banned from TV, Too Hot for TV.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it had a woman walking in front of the train.
Oh yeah.
Does anyone know what I'm talking about? That
Yeah.
played late night television, like if Howard Stern was on the E channel. That was like every other commercial, and that freaked me out because I was getting stoned and I was like, I don't want to watch that. Yeah, banned from TV.
Wow.
Too Hot for TV. Right?
Too hot for TV, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. You guys, do you know what I'm talking about? It, was on
it sounds
TV
familiar.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that was a modern iteration of the late '90s.
So with the last minute here, what do we think of Faces of Death? I mean, for me, I'm kind of glad it's here and it's around because it's such a cultural artifact of its time, and I think does have some redeeming value in that historically. And it's so weird that it's like that the director is that guy.
It's so weird. Yeah.
and I love that. But any other last final thoughts about just what the fuck this thing is?
I'll just encapsulate what I was saying. It's of a kind of dark, dirty, in your face, fuck the mainstream, sort of punk rock, hippie, post hippie, underground comic, zap, like acid informed dark humor.
Yeah,
of that type.
Sure, Marcus, any thoughts? Close us out.
Well, it's just not as gross and powerful as it once was. I think and it used to really. Just the image would scare me, but not anymore. It's look afterrotten.com and everything after that. It's just sort of.
I mean, I'm still freaked out by the fucking any real medical footage. That's enough for me. So
I'm
all
out
right.
with autopsy stuff.
I have to cheat for 1 second. I have to cheat for 1 second because I forgot to mention that the surfer part.
Yeah.
When I'm watching that this last time, I start to recognize the landmarks, and because that is a real moment. They found a real body there, and I look, it is in my neighborhood. That's where it was shot, in my neighborhood.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
yeah, isn't that right? Like that they were filming, and then that coincidentally a body washed.
They
up
were
on the shore?
filming pollution B-roll, which is in the film. Cans at the beach, and then they heard a commotion of yards down, and it was like, oh, there's surfer drowned. So they
Jesus Christ,
quote unquote lucked out.
Wow.
Well, we did it, guys, and I
did it.
never ever want to do a shockumentary. This show again.
I'm looking forward to never watching it again. Actually,
Yeah, I might never watch. I might watch 2. Actually, I'm curious about its.
I'm gonna watch 2.
No,
you
well,
guys
it's
are
just
sick.
it's
sick.
for the closing song. I want to see what the.
Okay, sure. So, One Fucking Tober will continue for the 3rd week episode. We had a interesting first week with Tales from the Quad Dead Zone, really getting shot on video horror film, rare obscure film that kind of gets very shockingly poetic by the end. I very much dug that episode. Tonight was Faces of Death. Next week, we're getting into a stone cold classic, man. One we've been wanting to cover for a very long time. We have not done a film by Roman Polanski yet, so this will... Oh, no, we have. We've done The Tenet. Fuck.
We did
The
Tenet, yeah.
We did The Tenet, but now it's time to roll it back for Rosemary's Baby will be next week. And Raimi will be on the show as well. So we're going to get into that for the next week. And then, of course, our final installment of One Fucking Tober is going to be Tom. We're going to be watching all of the Friday the 13th films, 1 through 8. I still got quite a few to go, but we're going to get into that. And we're going to talk about the entire Friday the 13th franchise, 1 through 8. So
we're treating it. It's a masterclass. We're treating it as just a big globby blob of like kind of one movie.
If it was one movie,
and just the progression of the storyline.
Yeah,
and the changes that would happen. Like now we're in the 3rd film, and things are getting this way and going that way, and then the 4th film's going this way and that way. And just sort of telling the story of a franchise is essentially what we're doing.
One fucking franchise. So we're going to get on that. So everybody, start watching the Friday the 13th films because come jam with us at the end of the month.
And sorry, to be clear, it's the Friday the 13th franchise, which stops at, like he's saying, the 8th film,
Jason Takes Manhattan.
Because then those films become the Jason films. Because there's some legal thing where Friday the 13th, copyright is over here. But then Jason can happen with in space versus Freddy.
Right.
So we're not going to go there. Maybe that's next October. Not right now.
Hey, Freddy versus
Marcus
Jason.
will helm the Jason franchise.
Oh, please.
Hey, Freddy versus Jason is a guilty pleasure of mine. For anyone who's one
I'm not
fucking hour.
complaining.
Who do you want here is a one fucking hour completist, and you've signed up on the Patreon, patreon.com/one fucking hour. Marcus and I did our horror movie guilty pleasure episode bonus ep, and Freddy versus Jason was on there for me. I have a blast with that movie.
Nice. Hey, dude, Cornfield Scenes. I just rewatched it.
Yeah.
I went to. I saw a very memorable screening
Great.
at the Alamo once, where when they did those big shows out. They went to the
Activations.
camp. Everyone came out. They showed that sleepaway camp.
Very fun.
It was amazing. It was really fun. So.
Very fun. All right, everybody. So that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning into the Faces of Death episode. But we can't let you go without your Momen of Zen. God. The fuck is this going to be? Cover your eyes for this.
No,
you might not want to see
no.
this. Okay. All right.
And yeah, you can open your eyes. Everything's all clear. Face of Death's going.
Let's play something sweet at the end.
Yeah.
right,
Okay. Maybe that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. Here's the footages.
Well, we'll see.
Here's
Of kittens. Yeah.
footage
I
of
don't
kittens and puppies. All right, everybody. Take care, and we will see you next week for Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's
Let's go.
Baby.
All right.
Ooh.
これが問題の電気椅子処刑だ。ジャンク。
Can I interest you in a rewind machine while you're here? On sale, $19.95. Gabe Kaplan got two. He's a nice guy. Rents faces to death. Kind of weird.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
That was wicked, man.